Good evening, gearheads, and welcome to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM, our pre-race show for the opening race of the 2025 Formula One season, with the Australian Grand Prix just an hour away. This is Jon Massengale. I am the gentleman driver of the team, if you will, but not to worry. I'm joined by the professionals. The man across the table from me here in the studio in Austin, Texas, is one of the most recognizable voices of two- and four-wheel motorsports and former ESPN pit reporter, Jonathan Green. Good evening, Jonathan. You ready to kick off the season?
I am. I've actually not been as excited for a Formula One season in a long time.
I know, I am too. And the man who needs no introduction to American Formula One fans from one of his many remote studios, this time in Atlanta, America's voice of motorsport, Bob Varsha. Good evening, Bob. How are you? Are you ready to kick it off with us?
Absolutely. Provided Mother Nature doesn't come marching through my window, I'm all set. We're under a tornado.
Is it worse than Australia?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, probably. Well, it's certainly not as wet, but I don't think they drive in a tornado.
Nah.
Well, and speaking of Melbourne, Chris Medland is out in Albert Park, and he's going to be joining us soon with his microphone and getting some live interviews. As usual, joining us for another season. So we'll look forward to hearing from Chris.
And if you were going to blow smoke, as you just did, I think I'd like to blow some smoke towards Medland, who I find one of the most impressive journalists currently in Formula One. And there's been some good ones, but he is right at the top of his game.
Well, your timing is perfect because Chris literally joined the show as you were praising him, so you didn't sneak it in. Hey, Chris, how are you, buddy?
You are kidding. I genuinely thought you were talking about Max Verstappen in the wet.
That's how I see you.
Speaking of the wet, how is the weather?
Yeah, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. I'm hiding inside at the moment, just at the entrance to the media center. I'm going to try going outside. I'm going to get soaked. I might lose you guys with losing Wi-Fi, but if I do, I'm heading to Pirelli. We know the drill, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Absolutely. Now, they say the rain should stop in about 20 minutes, and it's 62 degrees, and there is supposed to be a breeze blowing, so hopefully that will help dry the track.
Oh, there's definitely a breeze blowing. I can tell you that. It's really windy. Really, like the rain's coming in sideways. The thing is, it was meant to stop a long time ago. It's not always been really heavy. It's quite heavy right now, but it's kind of eased up enough where it's that kind of drizzle that will soak you right through anyway, but it's blowing into your face, which isn't great fun. So, it's the end point seems to keep getting delayed. And I'll admit, just looking around, you normally can see the beautiful Melbourne city skyline from the park. And, with the sunsets, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous view. And can't see any of that. You can just see cloud, drizzle and cloud. So, it's not the prettiest. It's very much Britain in the spring, I can tell you that. So I'm feeling right at home.
Chris, is it likely, one of the strategies I read was that now, because of what will be effectively a green track, there'll be higher deg, and so two-stop will come into play for everyone?
Potentially, yes. Yeah, I think we saw some trouble looking after tyres, actually, even over one lap, as most umbrellas have just been turned inside out around me as a big breeze comes through. I don't think we're going to have a green track. I think we're going to have a wet track. As Bob pointed out, it's so cool here weather-wise. Yes, there's a breeze, but it's too cold. It's not going to dry out. And the forecast isn't for sunshine to break through and bake the circuit. We've had very weird weather this week. And yesterday, there wasn't a huge amount of sunshine, but it was very hot. We got into the 90s. It wasn't particularly humid either. It was just always constantly hot. But it got hotter and hotter as the day went on. And at sunset was kind of the hottest point, and it stayed up in the 90s for a few hours and started to cool down probably from like 11 p.m., 10, 11 p.m. So the high today, as in Sunday, was at 1 minute past midnight this morning. And since then, it's just slowly been dropping, but going to continue dropping. So I don't think we're going to have, at any stage, warm enough weather or clear enough weather to dry the track out, even if it stops raining right now.
Yikes.
Wow.
Trust.
Yeah.
Can you tell, Chris, is there any pooling anywhere on the track that might delay things?
I imagine there's some. They're quite good here with this circuit with clearing the water, actually. Being kind of public roads as well, the way they've set it up, it's normally quite good. It's quite a crown in the road. I can tell you, I've done quite a few laps of the track running as some part of some marathon training I'm doing at the moment. I did 5 laps last night, and you feel it genuinely crossing from one side of the track to the other, going over the little crown as you go up one bit. You can feel it in your legs. It's that pronounced. So it should help the water run off. But I must admit, I'm stood right now looking at some of the floor around the paddock entrance, and yeah, there's lots of standing water. That some of the grass is waterlogged. Obviously, we are in a park, so there's plenty of grass areas as well that are getting pretty boggy. I was down at McLaren earlier. There was mud that really doesn't quite suit the F1 glamour spectacle they're looking for when they invite all their A-list guests on race day, and they're saying mind the boggy part. So yeah, it's pretty grim, I'll admit, but as long as it means that we get a race in, and I'm pretty confident we will, I just think it might actually have a bit of a delay to the start, potentially, if this rain continues all the way to the lights going out. But it will make for a spicy afternoon that, all bets are off after qualifying.
Well, Chris, I saw the F2 race, and I saw the
lack
what
of
looked
it.
like, well, yeah, the lack of it, the lead up to it, and the parade laps. But I saw the huge wind and rain. I mean, it really did look like almost like a hurricane. It was so crazy. And of course, I did see all the ducks that literally were on track as well.
They didn't scare much, did they?
Yeah.
They are fearless. There was Thursday, we were working away in the media centre, and what's great about this race in Albert Park is it's a proper 4-day motorsport festival. And they have races even on the first day. So we have some Porsche races and some supercars races. And the supercars event were on their, I think, second race of the day. And they suddenly cut to the exit of turns 9 and 10. So the high-speed chicane that you see the Formula 1 cars like at full limit through, and the exit shot that they normally show you there. And you had these ducks where half of them had already crossed the track and were in the gravel trap, and the other half of the line was still about to cross it, and the whole field was coming. And I was just like, oh no, we're about to watch an absolute massacre. But they stopped, the ducks stopped, and they kind of retreated slightly, but not by much. The whole field came flying through. I assumed most of them had been killed. I'm told they weren't. I think maybe one came to harm. But the rest of them just hung around, waited for the field to go through, and then crossed afterwards and sat in the gravel trap, just stayed there. So the rest of the race, they were probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 meters at most from the cars on the exit of that corner. Amazing. And they didn't flinch.
Yeah, I saw them during the F2 race, and in fact, I heard Arvid Lindblad talking about the ducks.
Yes, he was talking about the ducks, yeah.
And that's who I was really looking forward to besides Jack Crawford and...
Well, yeah, the Americans had a terrible
Who's the
time
other
of it.
American?
Max Exerson.
Yeah,
he
Max
had a
Exerson.
gravel trap excursion.
Yep, over the weekend. Yeah, I was looking forward to Lindblad. How did Lindblad do in the sprint race?
I want to say 11th.
No points from there. He dropped backwards a little bit. I think for a lot of them, they struggled in terms of that was hot yesterday and tyre usage. There was a lot you saw that that race got a bit processional in the second part of it, and you just kind of locked into your position, not like you could do with a DRS train. So the only thing that would hurt you is if your tyres overheated. And for some a bit further back, certainly the rookies learning, they did. So they dropped a few positions towards the end. So yeah, I think he dropped out the top 10, but he hadn't qualified particularly well, so that's what hurt him on that front.
Chris, on that,
there was a few. I was going to say there's a few engine issues they had, or electrical issues related to the engine, and because of that, they had to do a shakedown on Saturday as well. Okay. So they had to make sure that everything was okay with the cars. So I think a few drivers did have their qualifying results impacted, and Lindblad may well have been one of those. Yeah,
I noticed you were doing the press conference for F2. Well done. And I just wondered, given that you're across it, is there, we've obviously had this influx of F2 drivers in the last year. Who are you looking at this year that could be the next Colapinto?
Well, there's quite a few in there. Lindblad is definitely one that's had people talking, and he went and won down in New Zealand, didn't he, over the winter to get his super license? So that puts him in the frame, at the very least, to be a reserve for this year, one of the reserve options.
He's got the 40 points for sure.
Yeah, he can be a reserve option, although Ayumu Iwasa, who raced in F2 previously, he's doing that role at the moment. There's quite a few. I think Victor Martins has got a lot of experience, and I'd expect to see him fighting for the championship. He put on pole here, but obviously didn't get to use that today, so that was a shame for him. And he retired from the sprint, so didn't get points there. Joshua Dirksen keeps surprising me. He's racing for AIX Racing. He stepped up with Kimi Antonelli from Freca straight to F2 last year and won a couple of races and finished very strongly. But the team kind of evolved during the year, and I think a lot of people thought, is it just because they put a load of more money in the team, and that's why? But there's a lot of money in a lot of the teams in Formula 2, and sometimes it's very easy to think, there's someone with a lot of backing there, take it with a pinch of salt, their results. Dirksen's impressed me so far. So he's one I'd keep an eye on. I think he'll be in the mix at the front this year. He won the sprint race, but obviously that meant reverse grid pole, so qualifying didn't really go his way. Obviously, Jack Crawford, really excited to see what he can do. I think it's a huge year for Jack. There could be opportunities in F1 next year, but he's shown so many glimpses of what he can do without putting it all together in a season in F2, and he has to put it together over a season this year.
Well, you've answered the question I was going to ask, because obviously American fans will want to see Houston, Texas's own Jack Crawford do the business, and as you say, he's associated with Aston Martin, and one of them has got to go soon.
And you know what? We associated him, as me and Chris associated him with Cadillac in our possible predictions of American drivers for the new Cadillac team.
Possibly, yeah. I
mean, hey, why not?
Yeah.
It's good season, first. Let's see.
Exactly that. He'll have to do the job on track, but if he does, he'll be one of the best placed American drivers. Obviously, he can't influence what anyone else does, and I think Colton Herta will top that list if Colton gets his super license.
Yeah.
But that demands a very strong season as well from Colton.
Fourth, right?
As we've seen, I think top 4. So he could obviously have a good year with lots of big results, but if he ends up 5th in the championship because of Indy or something, then he's not going to get a super license, and they're going to be looking elsewhere. And that's where Jack could really put himself in the frame, alongside what I believe will be an experienced driver in the other car. And there's a few decent options there too. But Cadillac are playing catch up a bit because they weren't in the driver market last year when so much happened, which led to, obviously, as Johnny was saying, all the rookies stepping up. But yeah, I think Jack is definitely one to watch. You mentioned Max Esterson. Yeah, he's had a really messy weekend and didn't get a chance to redeem it he had 2 incidents in qualifying. An incident in qualifying and then an incident in the sprint race. So he will be annoyed by that because he looked good in testing. He was top 10 for Trident. Trident are moving forward as a team. They should be a bit more competitive. I think he'd impressed a few people within the team heading into the season. So didn't get off on the right foot, but he is someone I actually think could show some real potential this year, and people haven't been looking at him before. So that would be interesting to see as well, given his background coming from sim racing.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few, and certainly the rookies as well. Gabriela Mini and Sebastian Montoya at Prema both could be looking pretty strong as well. And I actually was in the same hotel as Montoya. And yeah, Sebastian's a really nice kid who wanted to chat and stop and is just excited to be here racing in F2. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders, helped by all the experience Juan Pablo's had. So, he'd be another one I'd keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's funny. I met him when he was about 12 at the Indy 500, and Juan Pablo had brought him along to the media event. And I don't know what he was doing there. Montoya was just being part of the scene, But he's like, "Oh, have you met my son? He's racing karts at the moment." And I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you." And sort of wondering in my head, is he a chip off the old block? Because you always have a double take when you hear a Hill or a son of a son. You think, has he got it? Is he another Brabham in the same mold? Is he another Montoya? And I think
is he another Stroll?
He's a chip off the old block for sure. Not that Lawrence was a great racing driver, so not a perfect example, but
yes. One thing about this rain, everybody normally in Formula One is going, rain is going to shake things up, and yes, it will. But I didn't want it to this weekend. I was hoping
you wanted to see a form guy.
I wanted to see, because we've got all these rookies, we've got all this, we've got tight racing. We're going to talk about qualifying here in the next segment, but it would have been great to get a straight up race at the start of this season because of the competitiveness that I feel that we're going to have.
Well, listen, don't complain. Albon was the only Williams on the grid last year because Sargent was thrown out of his car when Albon had a crash. Now Albon's 6th on the grid on merit in dry conditions.
Amazing, right?
Yeah. Really good.
It's great to see from Williams. The atmosphere in there is awesome. I was talking to Carlos Sainz's manager, Kako, who, if anyone's watched Drive to Survive, featured quite heavily in the latest series because of the movement last year. And he was saying, going into qualifying, just before qualifying started, that they can really feel the buzz in the garage because the team has 2 drivers it knows can both push the car to its limit. And even if one doesn't quite get everything out of it, the other one may well, whereas they were always reliant on one driver in the past to really pin their full hopes on. And even if you were thinking, when they signed Logan Sargent, they were hoping that he would develop and improve and become someone who could do that for them. You were signing someone who you were A, taking a risk on, but B, was going to need time. You didn't have that certainty from the very start. So to have it with the 2 drivers they have now, I mean, Sainz was disappointed and he's still in the top 10. He still reached Q3 with Williams. So it's that's a sign of how far that team has come already. And I think they've looked really good. But just a quick bit of news about how many cars will be starting the race. All 20 will technically start, but only 18 on the grid because we're going to have both Liam Lawson and Ollie Behrman from the pit lane there's one for Bob for the run through, because of changes made under parc ferme conditions. So whenever I stop interrupting Bob when he's doing the grid, he'll be able to tell you those two in the pit lane, and it will be Lawson ahead of Behrman because he qualified ahead of him.
All right. Well, we're going to get a quick break in, and when we come back, we'll have lots more to get you ready for the opening round of the Formula One season in Australia. Back after these messages.
Here's a question for you, Chris.
Yep.
If you have a rolling start to a Formula One race, a bit like they had in Formula 2, because Richard Verschoor caused the stoppage when they were going to go roll off, and they said he'd have to start from pit lane, or he was going to start from pit lane. But what would you do if you were adjudicated to start from pit lane and then it was a rolling start?
I think you still just wait for the last car
and then you go
start to roll past you.
Okay.
So I think what they would let them do, I'm trying to remember, because they don't get to take part in the formation lap either.
No, which is dangerous.
I remember. Do they? I'm trying to remember. No, they just get released, don't they, from the end of from their garage to get released to the end of the pit lane, for just to start the race. I'm pretty sure. So they'll just do the same thing. They'll release them to the end of the pit lane, and they'll wait there until the whole field rolls by on the rolling start. Flip side, with these conditions, you might find that they are allowed to take part in the formation laps.
That's what I'm thinking.
We might have multiple behind a safety car.
And then they would just come into the pit lane again and line up. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's check in on YouTube.
Essentially roll through. Sorry, I'm going to run into the paddock now. I've stayed on Wi-Fi up to now. So if you lose me for a bit, I will be right back.
All right. Great, Chris. We got Al X. Howdy from Minnesota. Yikes. It's got to be, isn't that weather heading up that way? It's probably not up there yet. I know it was coming across it earlier. How you doing, Al X? Kevin Kelly's here. These are new rain tires for these guys, right? Untested. I think that's true. Bill Ricker. Good evening, gents. Bill, what are you doing here? You're supposed to come later, Bill. What'd you say, Bob?
I'm saying the full wet has been redesigned and it's new. I don't think the intermediate is. Chris might know more about that.
You are right about that. It is a new wet.
Howdy, T&W. Andy P. Saturday night racing special. Happy opening day. Isn't that right, man? Saturday night racing. All right, we're coming back. Here we go.
I'm George Russell, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
All right, welcome back to Speed City. We're about 45 minutes from the start of the season, the Australian Grand Prix for Formula One. And we're going to talk about qualifying because, man, Jonathan, was that a fantastic qualifying? That's what I was talking about earlier. We got a great season, and we had a competitive qualifying.
It was everything that we've been talking about up until now, isn't it? And in other words, that inter-team battle, I was watching it with great interest. It didn't really matter who was pole. I think the cream came to the top.
Which team? Inter-team battles. There was several.
I don't think there was any too big surprise about McLaren being strongest. Ferrari were a surprise, given that they've been on 4 more weekend. But the inter-team play was great. I love that. To see where Hadjar would stack up against Tsunoda, to see, how Hamilton and Leclerc would go, all good stuff.
Yeah. Bob, what about you? What was your highlight from qualifying?
Well, I think that McLaren battle for the top spot was one of the highlights. Actually, 4 drivers at one time or another in Q3 had provisional pole, those being Russell, Verstappen, Piastri, and then finally Lando Norris. Typical qualifying for one thing, it was atypical in that everything was so close. Ruth Busker announced on the TV that this was the second closest grid ever after Austria a few years ago. Of course, Austria is a much shorter track with many fewer turns. So, but there were some surprises. And I'll talk about those in my starting grid. Some of them good, some of them not so good.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I hear your microphone. Are you grabbing an interview?
I'm grabbing Wi-Fi from Aston Martin. I finally got back connected to you guys. So yeah, we get huge crowds here in Albert Park. It's well over 100,000. I think they kind of boasted nearly 450,000 over the race weekend last year. Yeah. And that number of people in a fairly small space does mean that the phone signal struggles to keep up when you move away from the Wi-Fi. But I've got myself undercover again Although the rain has got lighter, slash pretty much stopped right now, which is good. So,
Chris, I'm looking at the live pictures now. The wind is really strong.
Yes, yeah, it's been all over the place all day. Like, it's really swirling, and I feel for the fans out there. There's a lot of people wearing ponchos, and a lot of them just cowering, trying to get cover. But it was funny. Yesterday, you were thinking whenever the sun did come out, they were all looking for shade because it's so hot, and there wasn't enough cover. Now it's from the wind and the rain. So, not been the most fun of the last 48 hours, I think, for the fans out there. But it's going to make it really tricky for the drivers in that sense. You're right to point that out. We don't always see how impactful the wet conditions, the wind can be in throwing a car off track. You think someone's made a mistake, and they kind of have, but the car's so unsettled by the wind.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, you can't see the wind. That's the problem, Chris.
No, I can tell you, I can feel it. Right now, I've managed to find a quiet spot, but maybe I'll just hold the mic out into the wind later on when I'm on the grid and see if it just shows how bad it is.
Well, I was just talking about qualifying, and I think, without a doubt, the worst qualifying is an easy one. Ollie Behrman, that was a disaster weekend.
Compared to his Ferrari run.
Nightmare.
Yeah, his Ferrari run of finishing 7th last year.
I think his expectations exceeded the expectations of the car.
Yeah.
I don't think the car's great yet.
Yeah, and I think Ocon would agree with that.
If Ocon can't get it out of last place, then it's not a good car yet.
Yeah, you know what? We have some clips. Casey, if you can grab Ollie Behrman, let's do that because, I had high hopes for him, of course, and Haas too. You never know after the season they had last year, but man, and look, it's a long season. It's 24 races. So let's hear from Ollie Behrman.
Hey Ollie, it just doesn't feel like you've had any luck so far in Australia. Just talk me through what went through your mind when you realised the gearbox or something was wrong with the car in quali.
Yeah, a bit disappointing, of course, to not be able to get a lap on the board. But it's been a messy weekend so far. So I think tomorrow will be interesting anyway, and then we can put it to bed.
How are you just generally feeling about things? Because you obviously know you can do it. You had such a strong year last year. Is it just a case of just a few things just not gone right?
Yeah, I think as a team we've struggled a little bit, and of course I haven't run all weekend, and that's made it tough for the guys to actually understand. We've been running with one car all weekend, so I can only apologize to the team for that.
Hey, it's a long season, but we got rain today, so no telling what could happen, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
He got valuable experience in the wet in Brazil last year as well. He did say that was going to be worth kind of twice the amount of a normal race run because you don't get many opportunities to race in wet conditions. So as a rookie, he's a well-prepared rookie in that sense. But he's right. That I was talking to the team. I was talking to Esteban Ocon's team, actually, who was saying, it's a shame for Ollie. It didn't help himself, but also didn't help the team because only having one car running and getting data was tricky.
Yeah,
the conditions were different on Friday to Saturday. Obviously, today, it's all bets are off. But going into qualifying, that if you haven't got the setup right, you haven't got someone else to test something different, you end up lost. And I don't think we've seen the true gap there from Haas, between Haas and the rest of the field. I don't think that's correct. They're going to be closer than that, but they just didn't get it right in the same way that you could say Ferrari didn't get it right in Q3, and they end up 7/10 further back than everyone expected. I think that's probably similar to Haas. And who knows, maybe there's a bit of crossover there with some of the stuff they share. Maybe it's a bit harder for them to adapt the car to this circuit.
And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but Haas didn't really get good representative across all types of conditions during testing either. They'd limited, mostly race pace runs with full fuel loads or something. They didn't get a full range of testing, did they?
Yeah, they focused, like they did last year, on race pace. They wanted to make sure the car performed well on high fuel and looked after its tyres. If you remember the year before, obviously that car would be rapid in qualifying and then could not do anything in a race because its tyres would just overheat massively and they would go backwards. So that's what their focus had been for 24, and they found that worked well for them, so they did the same for 25. But I think expectations were higher, both for them and for everyone watching, that when they did do low fuel running, they would be quick. And the hints that they showed in testing weren't great, but then we had that similarly from some other teams, and you just thought, well, they'll work on balance and feedback from the data they've got over the next 2 weeks and be better off. Case in point, Red Bull. How tricky that car was to drive during preseason testing, where we thought they would be coming here, and then actually right up to the end of Q3. It was only the final run where they didn't have the ability, as I watched Esteban Ocon skate off the track at turn 11 in the reconnaissance laps.
Oops.
He's all right, though. He's got going again. Then Q3 was the only time the gap got a bit bigger. But until then, Verstappen was right in the mix of pole, and he had a car he could push. So teams are able, these are still new cars for teams. They're learning about them. And if they find ways of getting them operating correctly, then they can make a big step. And I think, we'll see more from Haas as we move forward. But it hasn't been a smooth start. And they were not helped by the way it went for Behrman.
Chris, can I go a bit left field while we've got a bit of time? Your last article on Racer was about the Concord Agreement. And I usually get excited, but should I be? The one thing that did excite me was the penultimate paragraph that said governance. Extend the metaphor, if you will.
So the Concord Agreement is a combined agreement between the teams, the FIA, and Formula One themselves, the commercial rights holder. And it outlines essentially what the governance structure will be for the sport over the next period. I'm told it's a 5-year period, even though they didn't announce that. So from 2026 for 5 years, but also what the commercial terms will be. So how much revenue the teams will get, the way that they're going to move the sport forward commercially as well. And the way that negotiations have been happening is it's between the teams and the FIA on one side and the teams and Formula One on the other, so that they kind of reach agreements on the governance side with the FIA and on the commercial side with F1. The FIA, as I understand it, were kind of thinking that they could try and leverage certain aspects of the team's commercial deals to try and get more money themselves, because this is a very big lucrative sport and they don't profit commercially in the same way that Formula One and the teams do. So they were, as I understand it, the FIA were expecting it to be a while until there was agreements reached, but the teams had something close to agreeing or close to acceptable from Formula One on the table. Then obviously we got the Cadillac confirmation come through, which meant that they had all 11 teams approved for 2026 onwards, so they could do a joint agreement. And Stefano Domenicali signed a contract extension for the next 5 years on Thursday. And by doing that, that gave the teams confidence and faith that, we know where the sport's headed. We know the guy that's in charge. We're happy with it. So they all signed their deals. And kind of as soon as one did, the rest did, because they realized they're not going to get to renegotiate it. So they were all quick to sign, got it done. So Formula One got to announce that this morning, and it caught the FIA out. They were not expecting that. But it also means they've lost a bargaining chip. They can't turn around to the teams and say, look, you have some instability with Formula One. We can help bring stability, or we can help you in this way or that way. They just have to now reach a straight agreement, and the teams and F1 are a bit more united in their stance for the future. So one of the things I think from a governance standpoint that Ben Sulayem wanted was to remove the team's ability to vote on certain things. And he wanted it to be just between the FIA and F1, feeling that they were further removed and had an overview of where the sport should go, and the teams would have ulterior motives. You could argue that's kind of correct. Like, the teams can sometimes get in their own way, but it's been a while now that they've had a share of the say and the vote. And it's also strange if you've got 10 stakeholders so involved who are actually competing and they don't get to say anything. As I watch Liam Lawson drive straight out of the track across the pit lane exit line, and he might get himself in a bit of trouble for that.
He's had enough trouble already.
Laps. Yeah, exactly. He might get told he shouldn't have done that. The FIA did have certain things they wanted. And if the FIA now have to just make an agreement directly with the teams without having that hard card to play, really. So sources seem to suggest it could rumble on for quite a while, the governance agreement. So we're basically halfway there with the new Concord.
There you go. Thank you. I'm glad you explained that, because I saw it and was like, there's more to this.
I tried.
Well, yeah.
I hope that wasn't too much waffle.
No, it's great. Thank you.
What I was about to say was, normally these things are negotiated in the media, if you will, and we hear about the gripes the teams have and what the folks from Liberty Media are trying to do and what the FIA is trying to do. This shocked a lot of people, myself included, that it got done as quickly as it did, at least as far as the teams are concerned. And I agree completely with Chris that the FIA now finds itself with very little leverage to do much, if in fact it wants to.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Was the final number for Cadillac, was it $450 million, the entry fee, Chris?
I don't have a firm figure myself, I'll admit. I was told, I think it was late last year, that it was somewhere in the ballpark of 400. Yes, so 450 could well be the case. Obviously, that it could have changed between the end of last year and now. It could be slightly different, and they didn't want to give away the exact number. Strangely, because it's dragged on so long, the fact that they had an agreement, I stopped digging for the exact number when they announced it the other day. So I should go and ask some people next time I speak to them. There's a lot of people from Cadillac here, by the way.
That was my next question.
Graham Loudon and the team principals here. Yeah, Dan Tauris from TWG Motorsports is here as well, and one of the top execs from GM. So essentially, the whole shareholding team are here. They've been sat outside the FIA hospitality unit for most of the weekend, and I haven't managed to grab a word with them, sadly, so far. Speaking of people I might grab a word with, Jack Crawford's just gone by. Very quickly, Jack, you didn't get the race this morning in Formula 2. No. Did that suck?
Yeah, it did. It was, it was a good thing, though. It was way too wet, and the track is quite tricky in the wet, so I'm glad it didn't go forward. So.
And you had a really good qualifying, put it in the top 3. A team penalty meant that you were starting 10 places further back for the 2 races that kind of limited your chance of points anyway. But the pace in the car, you happy with the way you're starting the season?
Yeah, super happy, for sure. This was a place where we really struggled at last year, and to come back first race of the season after quite a bad test, to be honest, and to put in the top 3 in qualifying and competitive in practice as well. So, yeah, it gives me a lot of confidence for the rest of the season, where at tracks we were, really good at already. So.
And you going for the championship this year in Formula 2?
Yeah, 100%. Luckily today I didn't lose. So, title's still obviously in reach. It's a long season, but going for a championship.
I will look forward to watching how you get on.
Asking
I'll let
about
you go
Cadillac.
And hide under an umbrella. I can already tell you, I know he will not answer that question, Jon.
I wanted to test his PR skills to see if he would even answer. All right, guys, we got to get a quick break in.
I will.
Yeah. All right, Chris, we'll be back after these messages. He's swimming with sharks in Formula One. We're back live on the YouTubes. Let's see who's
Better
out
get
there.
a bigger boat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna head to the grid, guys, and I think I might lose you, but the signal might be better out there. Either way, if I have to, what I'll do is record some interviews and run back to the Wi-Fi to send them.
Awesome.
Right.
All right, let's check on YouTube.
See you soon.
All right. Thanks, Chris. All right. TWC Arian Gomez says this is a much better pre-race coverage than what F1 TV has on right now. Hey.
We'll take it.
Checks in the mail, sir. Thank you. Todd Dauber, only Dale Earnhardt could see the win. Hey, at least Todd Dauber, he put a LOL face. He appreciated my ridiculous dad humor.
But Dale Earnhardt could see the wind.
He probably could, yeah. Ollie to start from the pits. Kevin Kelly says, hit the like and subscribe, TW. Thank you, TW. He always remembers that. T and W, I should say it right. Hey, I got a live read. I should practice it right now, but because I've never done it before from Oracle, but no, I better not. I think I got it.
Well, you could maybe ask the Oracle.
Ever the Pro.
Ask the Oracle. What's that, Chris?
Ever the Pro, he said.
Oh, yeah. What else? Let's see anybody else chatting in. I think that's it for the moment.
Udon, Thailand. How was MotoGP?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, MotoGP tomorrow.
Oh, it's in Argentina. It's not in Thailand. What am I talking about?
I was going to say, where was last week, though?
Yeah, it was in Thailand.
Yeah. Marquez won the sprint race.
Yes.
Today.
Yes, he did. He's flying.
He is flying. Bob, do you hear any more thunder? You don't hear any trains, do you?
Nope, but lots of thunder.
Bob is keeping an eye out for tornadoes.
Pull this open.
All right, here we go. Coming back live.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Even if you think it's a bit overhyped, AI is suddenly everywhere, from self-driving cars to molecular medicine to business efficiency. If it's not in your industry yet, it's coming fast. But AI needs a lot of speed and computing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? Time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a blazing fast and secure platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, plus all your AI and machine learning workloads. OCI costs 50% less for compute and 80% less for networking, so you're saving a pile of money. Thousands of businesses have already upgraded to OCI, including Vodafone, Thomson Reuters, and Sono AI. Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. For new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. Offer ends March 31st. See if your company qualifies for this special offer at oracle.com/formula. That's oracle.com/formula. Welcome aboard, Oracle. We appreciate the sponsorship. All right, guys, we are getting close, 25 minutes before the Grand Prix. And
do you want some trivia while we've just done your Oracle bit?
Yes.
Technology and finance service brands account for 20% of all new deals. U.S. brands make over 34% of deals for the 2025 season. Yes.
Yeah, in Formula One. I knew that. Yeah. I mean, we joke about it being the new technology, but I would call crypto the new technology, but I'll call Oracle one of the most amazing technology companies on the planet, and that is not because they're a sponsor, because they've been around a long time. So Chris just dropped off. Bob, Varsha, how would you like to run through the Varsha grid with us?
Well, you got a chance.
Yeah, well, you got a chance.
Yeah, I'm working on a switch for Chris.
A mute switch.
Yeah, but here we go. Okay, starting up front, Lando Norris in the McLaren, 10th career pole for last season's championship runner-up with a clutch last-ditch lap to edge his teammate for a papaya lockout, despite losing his opening Q3 shootout lap due to track limits. His time of 1:15.096 is a full 0.8 quicker than last year's pole, and McLaren's first at Melbourne since 2012. Next to him, teammate Oscar Piastri, the favorite of the massive Aussie crowd, who wound up just 84, let me see if I get this right, 84 1,000ths of a second off his teammate Norris's, and what was frankly a pretty messy Q3 session for just about everyone. Row 2, P3, Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. Can you hear that thunder, by the way?
Yeah.
The 4-time defending world champion. Yeah, it's out right outside my window. Suffered through an up-and-down weekend, coming good in qualifying and grabbing provisional pole as only Max can do, only to be crushed by 0.4 of a second, first by Piastri and then pole man Norris. The McLarens are just tough. P4, George Russell Mercedes, the fourth driver, had a share of provisional pole during the session. He had it early before the Hail Mary laps from the three drivers ahead of him. But the Mercedes is quick, and Russell is hungry after crashing out here last season. Now, row 3, here come the surprises. P5, Yuki Tsunoda for Racing Bulls. A solid weekend for the RB boys, and if the little Japanese driver wanted to prove management erred by not seating him in alongside Verstappen on the A team, he's off to a great start. Next to him, P6, Alex Albon in the first of the Williams, proving that quick times in preseason testing were no fluke. Williams joined McLaren and Ferrari as the only teams to put both cars in the top 10, with Albon ahead of both Ferraris to boot. Row 4, the first of those Ferraris, P7, Charles Leclerc. The red cars overheated their rear tires more than the others, and that cost them in the third and final segment on their hot laps. Both Ferraris were forced to run their final hot laps in Q2 on used rubber, and both Leclerc and new teammate Lewis Hamilton slithered off the pace. P8, the aforementioned 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, who snapped into a spin on his final Q2 push lap. Both Ferraris advanced, but only just. And keep in mind, Lewis has done no wet running at all in that Ferrari. So he's got work to do.
He's got to figure out which wet
Row
buttons
5.
on the steering wheel.
Well, never lose track of your wet buttons. Words to live by. Okay, row 5, P9, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, improving from 17th in the first practice to 15th, then to 12th. And the Frenchman was never out of the top 10 in either of the first two quali sessions. So Gasly's looking good. P10, Carlos Sainz in the second Williams, Now, no doubt the ex-Ferrari man expected more, especially with teammate Albon up in 6th, but the 2025 Williams is clearly a much better car than the 2024 version, and they could do damage in the race. Row 6, P11, Isaac Hadjar for Racing Bulls. The tops among the 6 full-season rookies debuting here combine the Frenchman's performance with teammate Tsunoda's 5th-place result, and the Red Bull B team could shoot for the front of the midfield this season. P12, Fernando Alonso for Aston Martin. Now, until Adrian Newey sharpens his magic pencil, the Aston struggled for pace all weekend. Alonso's car looking particularly hard to handle at high speed. Row 7, P13, Lance Stroll in the 2nd Aston Martin. The same for him. He actually did pretty well to get within 300ths of his double world champion teammate, but the Astons are not impressing. P14, Jack Doohan for Alpine. Under big pressure with reserve driver Franco Colapinto looking over his shoulder, the other Aussie favorite in the field lost his best time in Q2 to track limits, then was delayed by Hamilton's late spin on his last-ditch effort. Row 8, Gabriele Bortoleto for Sauber, the reigning F2 champion. Bortoleto showed fast hands in saving a huge lurch from his car at the end of Q1, where he pipped fellow rookie Kimi Antonelli by just 9 thousandths of a second for the 15th and final slot in Q2. P16, obviously, Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, one of several drivers to override the curbs in one of the 4 DRS zones on this track, damaging his underfloor and costing the rookie lap time. Row 9, P17 is Nico Hülkenberg in the Sauber, out-qualified by his rookie teammate in their first race. The German at least showed that the 2025 Sauber is quicker than last year's, which, of course, isn't saying much. Now, we have a couple of drivers starting for the pits, as we mentioned at the top of the show. So starting 18th will be Esteban Ocon in the first of the Haases. Tough weekend for both drivers on the American squad. New team leader Ocon never finished a session higher than 18th all weekend. So starting 19th will be Liam Lawson in the Red Bull. The young Kiwi missed free practice 3 with a turbocharger issue. He then beached the car on his opening laps of Q1. So the team got him back out for a late run, and he slid off the road again, nowhere near what the man who replaced Sergio Perez is expected to produce. And finally, starting last, Oliver Behrman in the Haas, the hard luck story of the weekend thus far. A crash in free practice 1 left the British rookie without a car for practice 2. He then spun out of free practice 3 and retired from Q1 with a gearbox issue, completing no laps. He will start with the permission of the stewards, along with Lawson in the pit lane. And there you have it.
All right, Mr. Bob Varsha, thank you very much, sir. And we're waiting on Chris. And by the way, T&W had a brilliant idea on YouTube. He said, do a shot every time Chris interrupts Bob. And, of course, this time you made it cleanly through because it's a great idea.
I want to shout out to Gabriele Bortoleto. What a great lap that was in Q3 to knock Antonelli out. A lot of pressure there. Yeah. Big story for Brazil. I was reading an article about how long it is since they've actually had a real Brazilian to get behind. And you got to think of, Drogovic was supposed to be the new chosen boy, but never made it yet. Obviously Bortoleto has fast-tracked it. And so now the Brazilians are back in full interest. And, of course, he wears the center lid and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, you think about the money in Formula One and the way you have to have a lot of money one way or the other to get there.
Yeah.
But think about this. If he's the only one from that country, every sponsor from that country is going to be swarming to invest in him, essentially. So we're watching the television to see if
Colapinto thing.
Exactly. Good comparison. Yeah, we're watching the television. The rain has stopped, and we're looking for Chris in the grid there.
Yeah, it's brightened up a lot. I don't like he says. It's not. I don't think it's going to dry because it is sodden, and it's not looking as though the umbrellas are down as they start to sing the national anthem. But the wind is still high, and it is cool.
Yes.
Have you guys, were you watching the McLarens at the front of the grid? There are, it's like a company meeting. There's about 1,000 McLaren dressed people standing around the car. And that's not because they have wrenches in their hands.
I know
it's
why.
because they don't want anybody getting a close look at those cars.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting, isn't it?
Well, part of the fun of Formula One.
They're trying to stack up. I liked what George Russell said about McLaren. He said they're so fast, they're already working on the 2026 car.
You know, I tell you what I'm really looking forward to, whether McLaren can get the start of this right. How are Piastri and Norris going to play this? Because it's just as important to both guys to get their elbows out and prove Piastri wants to win his home Grand Prix, and he's got the best chance in a long time to do it. Norris is known for his poor starts. And so there's no question that Piastri is going to be going for it. And if they get it wrong or start to fight each other, guess who's right behind?
Yeah. That is going to be exciting. All right, we got to get our last break in, guys, real quick. But when we come back, we'll be 15 minutes from the race, and we have a fresh interview from Williams team principal James Vowles right after this. All right, still live on YouTube. No high fives for my flawless live read. Not a single flaw in that live read. Thank you.
But you did make a good point.
Yeah.
What did I say?
With that Russell quote about how
you're not going fishing for compliments from Casey, are you?
That's true.
Car, everybody out there is going to be seeing what happens in this first half dozen or so races, and then they'll decide how much they're going to devote toward their 2026 car. It's no joke. It's going to be a real dilemma for some of these teams.
Well, it's like what they're wanting to stack up as many points right now at the early part of the season, right?
Oh, yeah. Andy P says, thanks. I was already nervous before you said that.
That's funny. T&W says, how does Norris feel about Oscar's new contract?
I thought that was a very interesting timing for that.
Yeah.
Because there was no need for it. And it was as though Webber was pushing for it.
Well, we got to ask Andy P on that because he's the expert.
Well, yeah, I'd like to know what he thinks because, obviously you try to grab headlines in whatever country you're in. So you can imagine Webber going, hey,
that's true.
Obviously they were discussing it.
Webber, who's his manager.
Yeah.
Right.
And also knows what being a number two is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it? Multi 21?
Yes, Seb.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. Anything else happening here? Check a little. Oh, congratulations to the Optimum racing team in Sebring today. My son's team, they finished 4th, just off the podium. And
that's pretty cool.
They had a crazy day because they had a puncture. They were as high as P2.
By the way, if you need any guest services, let me know.
Show that to the camera. That's funny. They gave that to you guys to them in Vegas. Where's your camera? I don't even know.
It's right here.
Oh.
Hello to everyone, this is Gunther Steiner, this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Oracle Cloud Infrastructure can help you cut your cloud bill in half if you act by May 31st. See if you qualify for half off at oracle.com/formula. All right, guys, we are about 11 or 12 minutes from the start of the race, and Chris Medland is out in Albert Park in Melbourne, and he grabbed an interview with the Williams team principal, James Vowles. Let's hear that.
I've got James Vowles out in the wind and the rain. This probably is what you did not want to see with a top 3 rows start for Alex.
No, I'm okay with it. I think ultimately you've got to be comfortable and uncomfortable. We've done a good job across the year. It's not, I think, just good luck that we're in the top 10. I think it's a good package. So these conditions create opportunity and they're a bit of a leveler. So let's see what happens.
Looking forwards?
I think let's the moment be proud of where we've achieved. But as I said, in these conditions, anything can happen. You can already feel it here. We're being blustery. It's about 50, 60 kilometers per hour wind. So I think it's going to be an exciting afternoon. But the point I'm making is it creates opportunity, and I like that.
Well, how proud are you of where the team is right now, too? Because if we went back 12 months, it was a tough spell. This weekend's looked incredible compared to that.
Yeah, definitely. For me, right now, 12 months ago, we were surviving. Well, not today. We're here really in and amongst giants, probably a little bit ahead of where we should be in reality, but I think we are adding performance step by step, and there's not one area that's not improving, and that's what I was looking for.
Well, I hope it shows on track today. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good luck to Williams' team.
It's definitely the story of the off-season.
Yeah.
Question.
And not surprising after the way they looked in testing. Everyone was kind of predicting this. And I mean, look, we got to get a few races in to really say they're there, but man, it sure looks like it. Hey, we haven't talked about the story that we've talked about more than anything this year. That's Lewis Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And we touched on it a little bit.
Oh, the new boy.
Yeah, the new kid at Ferrari. But I think he's right where I kind of expected him to be about now.
Yeah.
2.5 tenths off in qualifying.
Yeah.
Because look, he's still getting used to a car, and I don't care who you are. You're in a whole new world. He's getting used to it. He has seemed very happy and relaxed. But I mean, do you guys agree that he?
Yeah, I do. And also, we're getting a lot of media from Lewis in terms of he's walking the walk and talking the talk in terms of this is the happiest time of his career, he's saying. And I got a feeling that we're getting more from him because he's excited about sharing his new journey with us. And so we've had a lot of intel about the car and, how he's getting used to the different ways of doing things and the tools that they're different than Mercedes. And, he even said to Carlos Sainz in the press conference, man, I don't know what half these things do. And he goes, no, I know. It's a whole different procedure, So, and Carlos Sainz knows that too, because he's been in several teams too.
Hey, Bob, before you jump in, let's hear from Lewis Hamilton, because we have a clip from Lewis, and then I want to get your take on it, Bob.
Definitely didn't expect us to be as far off as we were, but to be that close to Charles in the end in my first qualifying session in this car, which I really am still learning this car. I've been chipping away at it all weekend, fine-tuning it, finding new tools that we didn't get to test in testing that I never used before, and finding out what the differences of those things made. I think we've done a good job.
It feels like, I know you said you've got a lot of learning to go, but it feels like you're learning pretty quickly. Does it feel like it's coming to you quite naturally?
No, it really doesn't. It doesn't feel natural. It feels like it's been challenging, as I said, and just the normal setup changes you make. It's difficult to say too much, but like normal things you would have to, like mech bow, yes, but we've got so many different ways in which we can affect the mech bow, for example, and there are all new tools that I'm still trying to get my head around and understand exactly where it impacts the car. But I do think that I'm glad I feel good that I got pretty much everything from the car. I think at the end, I think there's probably a couple of tenths left in it, but yeah.
What do you think, Bob?
I think it's a pretty accurate statement of what Lewis is going through. I mean, keep in mind, he's never driven anything but a Mercedes-powered car, either in his McLaren or Mercedes years.
Yeah.
And I read recently he had the engineers and the fabricators at Ferrari change his steering wheel all around simply because he wanted to get it as close as possible, I think, to what he was used to with Mercedes, because the drivers have to make so many instantaneous decisions and they need to know which button does what when they're looking for information in a split second. So, I can understand all that. Plus, the Ferrari's just a different car. He's had so much to absorb and to process. But getting back to what Jonathan was saying about Lewis and this point in his career, his contract with Ferrari drives not only a 24-race Formula One season, but all of the off-track stuff that he does now is being backed by Ferrari. His diversity efforts, all of the other things he's doing are done with the help of financing from Ferrari. So he's got that to tend to and to shepherd and shape as well. So as Jonathan says, we're hearing a lot of media from Lewis. That's because Lewis feels you need to hear that media. He needs to have that to justify his position with Ferrari.
Hey, Chris Medland, I hear you back on, and we got your Vowels interview done, but I want you to set up this Zach Brown clip, this interview you just did with him, and tell us about his mood, his facial expressions, and set it up for us. Okay. I think we just lost Chris.
Louder.
Louder. I tell you what. Yeah, it looks like he is connected, but he's not there. So let's go ahead and play this clip from Zach Brown, and then we'll get Chris to talk about it afterwards.
I've managed to grab Zach Brown before he congratulates or wishes good luck to that. I guess you love to do that to your drivers, don't you? Have a word with them.
Yeah, of course. Definitely got to cheer them on, and they're ready to go. It'll be interesting to see if it's a standing start or a safety car.
Any nerves? I mean, you showed in the dry that this is, I don't want to say your race to lose, but you were so strong, and this mixes it up, doesn't it, this weather?
I'm always nervous at the start of a Grand Prix because anything can happen, but that's the adrenaline part of this sport, which I love.
Defending champions, you've got 2 cars on the front row, both championships in sight. How good does it feel to be the McLaren boss right now?
I'm having a good time, but feet on the ground because we know this sport can be cruel at times. So, of course, I've always enjoyed it, but I enjoy it more when it's 1-2 than 17th and 18th because I've tried that plenty of times as well.
Well, good luck today. Hopefully it's not 17th and 18th for you.
Thank you.
Sounds like a party there going on. And you know what, Zach Brown, I think he's being very honest
got
about
a new contract too.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
I think he's being honest when he says that he's that he's nervous because he always talks about that, how he's anxious and everything beforehand.
I asked Andy P, or you said ask Andy P, and he has come back with a very good answer to that about Oscar. Love the fact that they've given Oscar a long term. It prevents anyone else from getting him. And I think that's the point that Webber will have made and Piastri's team will have made is look, we played second fiddle, and we try to help Lando, and we won the constructors. We played our part. You've got to let us race unfettered because we think Piastri's just as talented as Norris, and you can vote with your feet by giving us an extension, and they've done that.
Yep. Chris Medland, I see you're back with us.
Finally, right at the very end.
That's all right. We got your Zach Brown and James Vowles. Zach sounded, we were just talking about how he's honest about being nervous. And I think he really is. I think everything he said is spot on.
Yeah, you kind of see it in his face, if I'm honest. You can just tell there's like a nervous energy in there that compared to when it's post-race and they've won. So that's why I kind of put it to him that he must be feeling it. But at the same time, it's because they've got it all to lose today, haven't they? Especially in these conditions.
Yeah, very true. Chris, you sound like you're at a golf tournament. Why are you so quiet? You're in somebody's hospitality, aren't you?
I'm in the media center. I've had to come back in, and the Wi-Fi dropped out in here, which is why, just as you threw to me to intro that, I couldn't speak to you anymore. But it's come back. But it does mean I'm around a lot of people trying to work who are not shouting into a microphone. So I'm just keeping it a little bit lower while I do that. But yeah, I could be a golf reporter. Why not?
All right, we're 2 minutes, guys. We want to get our predictions in for the first race of this. Who wants to go first?
Well done, John. Congratulations. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So it's a wet race, maybe, probably. I'm going to go the hometown favorite. I'm going to go Oscar Piastri.
Damn it.
Who said that?
Me.
I stole yours. I'm going to say Oscar Piastri and George Russell and Max Verstappen. Greeny, you got to go next.
Piastri, Verstappen, Lando.
Okay. Bob?
Verstappen, Russell, Lando.
And Chris Medland.
I'm going to go for Verstappen to win it with a long putt for Eagle on the 18th. That will be followed by I'm going to go Norris and Russell. I think there's just I really hope Oscar has a good race, but these conditions make it a lottery. I'm backing Max to win, certainly, but we haven't seen an Australian on the podium here ever. Like legally, we had Ricciardo disqualified. So
that's right.
That's why I feel like it's a big deal if he finishes in the top three. I could just see it something happening.
All right. Well, at the risk of losing some audience in our post-race show, I'm going to tell everybody that Chris Medland is maybe a little bit late to the post-race show because he's going to.
I am. I'm sorry.
Because he's going to be on F1
I'll
TV.
be at Augusta.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Stay right here for the race, the BBC feed, and of course, come back after the race because we're going to have a full post-race show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you after the race.